Many are saying that the reason why many black people now perceive ourselves as being our worst enemies and reveres Caucasians in spite of a brutal history to the contrary is because of the Willie Lynch syndrome and or the Stockholm syndrome. However, both of those explanations are totally untrue. Usually people have the right to believe whatever they choose to believe, but that's a luxury that the oppressed does not have. The oppressed must gain a clear, accurate, and concise understanding of our plight and condition. Because if our understandings are flawed, then all of our liberating remedies and strategies that stem from those misunderstandings will also be flawed. This is why those who know the truth must teach. African proverb. The truth of our collective mindset and condition is because black people have been socialized by the white society. Socialized is when the oppressors exploits their monopoly over the information that are systematically and repetitively fed into the collective minds of the oppressed to manipulate the oppressed to think and behave in ways that are beneficial to the oppressors. There are 4 ways to effectively socialize generations of people: by what they're taught, by what they see, by what they hear, and through repetition. Because the white society controls the education we're taught, the media images we see, the narratives that we hear, and through constant repetition, white oppressive forces have socialized the collective minds of millions of black people to think in ways that are against our own self-interest and that instead serves the interest of the white society. The weaker the individual mind is, the stronger the brainwashing is. This is all possible because people are like computers. All you have to do is keep giving them certain information every so often, and you can persuade an entire generation towards an implied objective. Regardless of how intelligent people are, if it's possible to control the input into the human mind, it's entirely possible to control what people will believe. The white society exploits its control over the information that black people receive to control what black people believes. More specifically, to socialize us to think and behave in ways that serve the interests of their white society. If you think that this sounds ridiculous, it's because you've never been taught true history. Throughout Western history, those empires that were brutally oppressive, fearing eventual acts of massive retribution from those they brutally oppressed, have always prevented such acts of retribution by socializing the minds of the oppressed. Those that have been socialized rarely ever learned of this fact. This heinous practice was never abandoned. It's the true hidden reality of what has been done to black people. White social scientists describe the nefarious process as merely instilling a value system into the collective minds of the black subordinate population that makes us adhere to the authority and existing infrastructure of the white dominant population. It's how the white society protects itself from massive unified black retribution. White governments defends and justifies unethical practice by saying that it is the duty of the government to prevent dissent from rising amongst its subordinate population against the dominant population. Moreover, the socializing of black people is being reinforced daily through unrelenting media subliminal programming. The white media's unrelenting negative depiction of black people that amplifies the negative to the point that it distorts our reality is much more than just biased media reporting. It is actually a covert, insidious, demoralized, divide and rule psychological warfare propaganda campaign. Demoralized, divide and rule is a method of maintaining control over a targeted population through constant and unrelenting demoralization in order to create self-hate and division between them. White social scientists determined a long time ago that by perpetually negatively distorting what black people believe about ourselves collectively, they could demoralize us, divide us, create black self-loathing, and shift black collective aggressions away from the white society and redirect it against ourselves. Furthermore, that as long as they keep us within this condition, they could then rule over us forever. This manipulation system is deployed like a massive media marketing campaign that constantly subjects black people to receiving only the fraudulent worst narratives about ourselves. Within this system, fraudulent, black racially demoralizing, and black racially devaluing propaganda is being pumped unrelentingly into the unsuspecting minds of the black population without being challenged nor counterbalanced by an equal amount of black positive, racially affirming information. It conveys the subliminal message that black people are our own worst enemies and that we therefore need whites to govern over our lives. Moreover, that black people should admire, respect, and trust only whites. This system is extremely effective because when black people are repetitively presented these noted narratives from trusted white media sources, it can be very difficult to resist its implied propaganda programming, especially when the propaganda is being told daily and so unrelentingly. With time, being unable to refute the constant negative information being told about us, many black people eventually comes to accept those narratives and thus creating division and self-hatred among us. The ultimate goal is to demoralize black people to such an extent that we begin to doubt our own ability to govern ourselves. And we believe that we therefore need white people to govern over our lives. Moreover, that we begin to believe that we're better off living under white dominance, and therefore we abandon all hopes of ever liberating ourselves. It also creates black self-hatred and disunity, which attacks the core and creates disunity, which attacks the core foundation of what bonds us as a people, and we can then be ruled over forever. Black people are being programmed daily to think favorably of Caucasians and negatively about ourselves. This is our hidden reality. Our minds are also being socialized to revere Caucasian through movies. It was also through the movie industry that Caucasians gave themselves a favorable image makeover within the collective minds of millions of black people. When the villains throughout history are constantly portrayed within movies as being the white saviors and as heroes righting the wrongs, many black people start perceiving Caucasians based upon those false media depictions rather than as they truly in fact are. Most people think that movies are made for nothing more than entertainment. That never was the case. The greatest social messages are promoted through movies. Social norms promoted through films can influence the way of thinking and the cognitive map of the populated audience. In a normal conversation, when you're using logic and facts, your guard is naturally up. But when you're watching a movie, there's no debate. Your guard is therefore down. The sensitive part of your brain is not in action. It isn't saying, yes, I agree with this, or no, I disagree with that, as you would in a conversation or a debate. You're actually within an alpha state. You're completely open and being able to be downloaded with ideas and images. It was this alpha state process during the movie watching experience that Caucasians gave themselves a favorable image makeover within the collective minds of black people while we think we're just being entertained. It's also the true reason why many black people revere Caucasians in spite of such a brutally horrific history of the contrary. Those movies are also the reason why Caucasians are most often favorably perceived as being the group possessing the highest ethics and moral standing, in spite of their brutal history and the brutal reality of the contrary. Until we break the monopoly the white oppressors have over our minds, liberation is not only impossible, it's in fact unthinkable, because their monopoly over our mind is how they mentally enslaves us. Those black people who don't critically think never notice their mental change. When you've been told the truth, and you know deep down within your soul that it is the truth, and yet you still refuse to accept it and act upon it, it is then that you realize that you are truly mentally enslaved. Brothers and sisters, it's time to learn the truth and act upon it. Start developing ways to overcome the white society's monopoly over our minds. One love and peace.